Today, I am honored to speak with George Kinder. With a career spanning more than 35 years, George has fundamentally transformed how financial advisors approach the planning process, putting client values and aspirations first, and then creating a financial strategy to deliver that life, with the fiduciary responsibility at its core. George has been a pioneering voice in the fee-only fiduciary movement. He's trained over 5,000 professionals in 30 countries and founded the Kinder Institute of Life Planning in 2003. George joins us today from the UK to discuss the early days of the fee-only movement, why fiduciary matters more than ever, and his vision for a world where putting others' interests first isn't just good ethics on paper, it's the foundation of civilization itself. George, thank you for joining me.
Wonderful, and thanks for that introduction. That says it all.
So you were a fee-only planner for more than 30 years. Tell us about your earliest memories of the industry and what led you down the path of fee-only as your career evolved.
Well, I really started fee only. It was just the way to do it because I didn't start as a broker. And back in those days, the only thing, I mean, when you thought about investments, what you thought about, what everybody talked about was their broker did this, and their broker recommended this, and their broker did this. And I'm very different from today. There's so many different kinds of advisors, and brokers don't even call themselves brokers anymore, as we know.
True.
So, but it was that was all there was. And I mean, very wealthy people had private, investment advisors and all that. So. What happened was I was a tax advisor. I was a tax return preparer at the beginning of my career. And so when I decided to move into financial planning to become a financial planner, I at that point there were no commissions allowed for accountants,
Mm-hmm.
and because it was not considered professional, and so it was natural that as I moved to financial planning, I would do it on a fee only basis. But what was stunning for me and what was really exciting was when I don't know whether it was the Boston Globe or Time Magazine, there was a tiny little squib that announced a meeting of a few dozen people, and it was in the early 80s. I don't remember, 82, 83, 84. And it was the first meeting that NAPA had in Atlanta. And I saw it and I went, wow, because I didn't think there was anybody in the world doing it the way I was doing it, which was on advising people on a fee only basis.
And so you've been a thought leader in the financial industry for decades now, encouraging consumers to look for three straightforward indicators that the professional they're working with is a fiduciary. So give us your definition of fiduciary. Tell us what those indicators are and why they're so important today.
Well, the first one goes way back, and that's the one that you're in a leadership role in, Alan, and doing great stuff for the industry. And it's the fee only one, and that goes back to the Investment Advisor Act, and probably some historians, economic historians, would take it further back. But in the early 1940s, the Investment Advisor Acts came out as a consequence of the terrible things that happened that led to the Great Depression.
Mm-hmm.
And one of those things was it was felt was inappropriate behavior by financial advisors. So they insisted that investment advisors be fee only if they were going to be investment advisors. And that's a great thing, because what it means is you're not selling product. What you're doing is you're giving advice, and you're giving it for a fee, and you're putting the client's interest first. That's the essence, really, of fiduciary, is to put the client's interest first. So that was the first thing they thought of, and that's a natural thing. It was the one thing that you could kind of pin and really see clearly. This other way of doing things just wasn't really in the best interests of a client or a consumer. So passionate about it from the very beginning. But as time went on, things happened. Like as I said, when I began in the industry and found the fee only community, this was at NAPFA, the first kind of prominent organization claiming that space. Right around that time, a little bit before it, had begun the study of becoming a financial planner called, the certified financial planner
Sure.
designation. And nobody was doing that. And at first it was salespeople coming in, and you had a bunch of people from law profession and basically from sales and products. But it was a holistic, it was the beginning of a holistic approach, which now is really clear. They've just done a fabulous job in their development. And so the second fiduciary element that a consumer should look at is, does your advisor have a holistic approach and training in all the different elements of finance so that they can help you with every aspect? Because if they don't have that, how are you certain that they're going to actually give you good advice? The advice that you want is advice is meant to be leading you to freedom.
Hmm.
And that's and a fiduciary, as a great listener, is delivering that. They're putting your interest first. So you want someone who has those skills. So that developed, and then along came the work that I pioneered in the industry, which is known as life planning. And our designation began in the early 2000s. It's been around for over 20 years, and it's the registered life planner designation. So the third thing that I realized as I was working and looking at what is it to be fiduciary is that how on earth can you put the client first if you don't first discover who they really want to be? And even today, people don't do that. I mean, there's a lot of training in it in
Sure.
all aspects of the industry, but the real essence of it is incredible listening. And even now, some of the best advisors aren't doing that. And what is that about? I mean, just one thing to be aware of is that um, a great listener will hardly ask a question in the first meeting. They'll set it up so that the client is really, you're having a relationship that is authentic, and that's an extraordinary thing. The One of the things that has just come out, Scientific American, in December of last year, listening is 100 million times as fast as thinking. 100 million times as fast. So when we're spreading our thoughts, if we've put two questions out there, and particularly if they're in relatively rapid order, the client assumes it's our meeting, not theirs. And so they back up
Yeah.
and they just follow whatever our agenda is. And maybe we've got an agenda that will lead them to freedom, but the trust that is required to do that is extraordinary. And that trust is based on great listening. Great listening is from kind of facilitating that conversation rather than peppering it with thoughts and questions. So, registered life planner designation, CFP, fee only, clear fee only movement member. Those are the three things that make a great fiduciary. And if a consumer can get two out of those three, they're doing pretty well in this industry. You get three out of three, boy, gold
There you go.
standard. Yeah.
So listening, competency, and seeking to help others without focusing on what's in it for you. Such simple concepts. But you're not just promoting fiduciary standards within the financial services. You're taking those principles to a much larger scale, and you're arguing and making the point that the fiduciary standard, which is the obligation to put others ahead of yourself, should really be the operating system for civilization itself. And you're doing this through, and tell us about this, Fiduciary in All Things, FIAT, Fiat. Tell us what that's about.
Well, I mean, it's the fiduciary is a really interesting topic, and you and I have much more engagement around it than a consumer. A consumer, in general, often don't know what a fiduciary is. So a fiduciary, first and foremost, puts their client first. And what you realize when you look around, and democracy is a fiduciary concept,
Mm-hmm.
that we have a government that puts the people first. Um, Capitalism, particularly the narrow way that has come out of the 1970s, the movement, particularly of Friedman and all that movement. Capitalism has a fiduciary obligation primarily just to the shareholders. What has been beautiful in my lifetime, in my career, and I think you would probably agree with this, is that the colleagues that you and I have coming out of this broader fiduciary sense, they put their clients first. And that's an amazing thing. That's a very noble thing to do. And about 15 years ago, there was a movement that came along that said, "Hey, we're still not quite there because, well, here's the thing. Think about this in terms of fiduciary standard. Right now in America, and it's worse globally, there are three billionaires that own as much as 180 million people. Three,
Yeah.
180 million. Can't put enough fingers in the room, right? 3 to 180 million. So is the fiduciary standard that is our operating system right now, is it toward humanity? Is it democracy? Or is it shareholders? Pretty clearly shareholders. That is the operating system. So what I realized was, 15 years ago, that developed this notion of people, planet, and profit as being a fiduciary way of approach. And that now has an advocacy of I think, 10,000 B corporations in the world. There's also the ESG movement and conscious capitalism, different things. And I realized that just what's happened in the last 10 years or so, Alan, you realize that not only do you need kind of a fiduciary protection toward the planet and toward people, toward humanity, but you also need it toward democracy and toward the truth. I was on a podcast the other day with I think 15, 20, 30 podcasters in the financial world. And one of them said he thought that the real problem in the world is that truth mostly, as it's advertised and everything's half truth.
Hmm.
And in democracy, if you don't have the truth, if you don't know what you're voting on, then you can't vote. I mean, and so democracy falls apart. So I put truth and democracy in there. That's what fiduciary in all things is. It has all four of those things, and I'm promoting it as a piece of legislation. Um, just one more thing about this. The way it came about was I'd done a world tour thinking that the world all really wanted one thing and wanted the same thing. And I thought, why aren't we delivering it? And that's what I discovered when I went around. But what has happened after 250 years of phenomenal growth, and we owe that to capitalism, and that's extraordinary what has happened. But if it was the very best system, and the notion is entrepreneurs engaging and competing and delivering the very best of humanity. Well, if the very best of humanity is our wisdom and compassion, why is it that after 250 years of development, we don't find that at the top of every hierarchy of power? And I just realized we needed something that would make sure that the leaders of our great institutions that get leverage, have this incredible leverage of debt and capital and media, had human values at the forefront. So I'm promoting that, around the world and talking about it everywhere. And it's still capitalism. It's just that we ask that the leaders be trained in human values and that they place us, humanity first, ahead of their own self-interest.
And all of that has led up to you being awarded an Innovator Founder Visa in the UK. And you've launched a global startup called The Mules from London, where you are bringing the all things in fiduciary concept directly into businesses and governance. Tell us about that. What's going on with that right now?
Yeah, that was amazing, Alan. I mean, I didn't know that was going to happen. As I'm 77 years old, man. I mean, I've been around, and that's why I go all the way back to NAPFA. And here I am launching a startup, and the startup I had to compete with a lot of other people, and the main element of the competition was innovation. Had to be profoundly innovative. It also had to be viable and scalable. So I worked on a business plan like I'd never worked on one before in my life. And when I finally handed it in, they told me, well, it usually takes us at least 4 weeks to decide on this. And I went online and discovered it was often 4 months. And I'm going, oh my God, it's sitting on tenterhooks. Where am I going to be with my life and my wife and my kids? And and they awarded it to me in 9 days.
Wow.
Yeah. So they saw the innovation element of it, and what you'd wonder. I mean, a lot of people when they think about fiduciary, they think it's about regulations,
Yeah.
and you and I have seen this. We see it in a battle in Congress over
Sure.
pension,
Which
and
dilutes its true value. Yeah.
exactly, totally dilutes its true value and misses the point. And it really the reason is that we're all fiduciaries, but the industry around us is not.
Yeah.
And it's something that I'm like promoting, speak to you and all your network. We need to knock on the door of that industry and say, it's a great thing for us, great thing for our clients, great thing for society. It's time that you did it as well. So over there, what they realized and what I argued is that I can make businesses over here. I'm now in London. I can make businesses far more productive and than they are right now. And a study by Bain and Company back in 2017 is kind of the basis of this. And that is that we know that happy workers are a good thing. What we don't realize is that inspired workers are a phenomenal thing.
Hmm.
So what Bain and Company realized was that inspired workers are 125% more productive than a satisfied worker. 125%. Imagine that. You got 1,000 workers, you could fire half of them and inspire the rest and still be much better off than you are right now. And I'm not encouraging you to fire them, but I'm saying you can do your business can be really alive with
Yeah.
collaboration, joy, engagement, all of those things. So I'm bringing fiat is one of those elements, but also life planning is. The thing that I'm known for is inspiring, training advisors how to listen and how to inspire their clients to identify what their dream of freedom is and then to pursue it. And if you think about, I think of three huge productivity gaps in business, and one of them is the gap between the CEO and everybody else. And that gap is if you're an employee, you don't dare tell the CEO who you really want to be, that you want to play the guitar on the beaches of the Mediterranean or you want to be home with the kids. You don't dare tell the CEO
Sure.
because you might not get promoted. You might not get the raise. You might not get the position. So, but that, in fact, you imagine all these workers holding back the main source of their inspiration in life. Which do you think they're more inspired by, the mission of the company or the mission, their own personal
Sure.
aspirations for freedom? Just no comparison. So there's a huge energy gap, productivity gap that can be unleashed. And I'm going to bring that in. Plus, we're going to personalize fiat, fiduciary in all things for the workers. So that also brings a lot of energy because of the purpose-driven nature there. And then we're going to bring in those 100 million mind moments between each thought because there's a lot of productivity that's being missed there.
And this is industry agnostic, right? This is not just for financial service companies.
I'm starting there because that's the logical place. It's the
Sure.
place I'm known, right? It's the low-hanging fruit for me, and it's exciting because I know them and I can talk about life planning as well. But no, it's for everything. We could be so much more productive, and part of this is, Alan, as you think about it, we've come together as a planet, as humanity, for the first time in the history of humanity up until the last I don't know how many years, whether it's the advent of the plane or the internet or the iPhone or whatever it is, but we can communicate with every other person on the planet right now. And if those iPhones told the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, which is one of the standards of fiat, well, we could vote. We could have a reasonable, conversation. We'd have our differences, but we could have a reasonable conversation. So, so the it's I think it's time for us to have a standard that is not kind of nation centric, ethnic centric, whatever it is, but is something that all of humanity can take great pride in And our kids, instead of no longer having heroes, only having superheroes, can have heroes. And we can look at the industry that we have and the civilization we have and know that its structure is so humane, so trustworthy that it can go for generations and generations. Right now, we don't know that.
Well, thank you. Uh, so, if people listening want to learn more about you and your work, how they can get involved, there are a few websites that we can point them to. We're going to put those up on the screen and also include them in the description. George, thank you for asking us all to think bigger in what we do and how we do it, to living up to the fiduciary standard, not just for financial advisors, but in all things for sure. So it's been an honor. I appreciate your time and the inspiration here. I'm going to kick it back over to you for any final thoughts that you've got.
Oh my. Well, well, I think the main thing, if I were to just kind of settle with this and think what I would want to speak to either advisors or consumers about, is that, and it's something I talked with my now 21-year-old daughters just the other day. I said, you want to understand what money is for, and what money really is about for you in your life is for you to maximize the amount of freedom that you have throughout your life. That's what it's all about. And working and so for an advisor, it's true for an advisor too, that an advisor should know their own dream of freedom and should really be living it, because then they're modeling something for their clients and they understand the challenge of that. Um, uh, Go for freedom. Find a fiduciary advisor who can really be a great listener for you and a mentor, and is dedicated to delivering you into your dream of freedom.
Wonderful. Thank you, George. It's been an honor.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank
Take
you,
care.
Allan. Likewise. Yeah.